Higher up we come to a short diversion of the Via Sacra that leads from the Acropolis to the Antra of the Sibyl. Here are the ruins of the Temple of Apollo. The temple's podium is from the Greek period and the columns are from the Augustan age. In later times it was transformed and converted into a Christian church, probably around the 6th century AD. On the top of the Acropolis, the highest part of the city, in a magnificent position, is the Temple of Jupiter, which in its time, with its clear bright marble, must have shone like a lighthouse to the fishermen. Solfatara, an extinct volcanic crater, is covered by a clear crust of different thicknesses. From the ground, the hot volcanic mud bubbles through at a temperature of about 162 degrees centigrade, which is accompanied by a strong odour of sulphurous vapours. They do say that the vapours are very beneficial to one's health. In many places, the fumarole, jets of steam and natural mineral waters break through, and the ground beneath one's feet is both hot and uncomfortably thin and resonant. Also comprised within the territory of nearby Cuma is Baia, which was famous in ancient times for its medicinal waters, frequently used by the Romans. A few kilometres further along is the Bay of Bacoli, an interesting archaeological centre near to Cape Miseno, colonised in the 7th century BC by the Greeks and called Bauli. To the east of Salerno, in the Piano del Sele, is the ancient city of Paestum, full of legend and history. It was founded by the citizens of a settlement called Sybaris at the end of the 8th century AD and named Posidonia. Later it was occupied and ruled by a local tribe, the Lucanians, who changed its name to Paestum. In the year 273 BC it was taken over by the Romans. A place of solemn remains, it offers the visitor a chance to enjoy and also discover what ancient Campania has to offer. The majestic temples, the atmosphere that surrounds everything, only adds to the wonder and fame of this very marvellous and authentic open-air museum. The oldest of the temples, and also the largest, is the well-known Basilica, which dates back to the 6th century AD and is dedicated to the goddess Hera. It has 50 Doric columns, a central hall, and the aisle is divided into two. A century younger, and maybe even more fascinating, is the Temple of Neptune, wonderfully preserved, and contrary to what was believed when first discovered, it was not dedicated to the god of the sea Poseidon, but to the goddess Hera, as is the basilica. Built in Doric style, it is simply magnificent and has a nave divided into 3 sections. On another site, we come to the 3rd temple, the Temple of Ceres, which dates back to about 500 AD and was dedicated to the goddess Athena. The National Museum houses thousands of objects of great interest and value. This collection is constantly being added to thanks to the continuous excavations undergone. Now in the collection are also the very rare, very richly sculpted metopes, which were discovered in a sanctuary devoted to Hera outside the city walls. Another highlight are examples of Greek mural painting. This amazingly serene series of internal tomb paintings was done in the 5th century BC. The tombs were made up of 4 slabs and were decorated with different scenes, the most important being the tomb of the diver. A special room has been set up to store and protect these wonderful exhibits from any atmospheric pollution, and so preserve them in the best possible way. Dedicated to San Lorenzo, the Certosa di Padula is one of the largest monuments in southern Italy. Founded in the year 1306 by Tommaso di San Severino, the Count of Marsico. It has a gridiron, and it is said that the saint was chained to the frame of these iron bars and burnt to death. The Certosa's architectural statistics are staggering: 360 metres long and 180 metres wide. It covers an area of 52 square metres and is surrounded by acres of gardens. In fact, it was called Desertum, which symbolised the vastness and the isolation of the Certosini monks. This authentic art treasure has a main facade in Baroque style, and inside one can admire a variety of mosaics and frescoes. Of particular interest are the great cloisters, a vast rectangular shape, 1,200 metres square. It is articulated by 84 pilasters, and at the centre is a very pretty fountain. The monastery's most beautiful room is the library, reached by a spiral staircase of 38 steps, alongside the great cloisters. Also of rare beauty is the elegant elliptical staircase with 69 stone steps, illuminated by 7 large openings leading to a covered passageway. Salerno occupies a fascinating position between the mountains and the picturesque bay. Founded by the Etruscans, the city was later called Salernum by the Romans, who took its name from the Salt Sea and the little river Irnus, now known as Irno. It became a Roman colony in the year 194 BC, and in the early Middle Ages it was subject to Benevento, but then later it became an independent Lombard principality until it fell to the Normans. Salerno gained stature from the fact that it possessed the most celebrated medical school in the Western world. Today it has become a modern centre, one of the most active in southern Italy, not only from an economic and cultural point of view, but also because it is the most extensive part of the region, spreading out a good 4,293 square kilometres. Even though it underwent a great deal of damage during the Second World War, it still preserves much of its history from the various civilizations, and is rich too in art, covering many styles such as Byzantine, Romanesque, Gothic, etc. The splendid Duomo is a masterpiece of Norman architecture and is one of the most important monuments in the city. Built after the first half of the 11th century and later restyled by Robert Guiscardo. The fine Romanesque doorways, flanked by 2 lions, are the entrance to the large atrium. The wide open area is enclosed by a splendid selection of classical columns, above which are formed arches in Arab Sicilian style, rising high from stilt blocks. The main body of the cathedral is divided into 3 naves, leading up to a raised transept above the crypt and banked by 3 apses. In a wide plain surrounded by mountains at the junction of 5 important roads. The town derives its name from Abellinium, an ancient city of the Hirpini, dominated by Mount Partenio, better known as Monte Vergine. Founded by the Irpines, it became a very important Roman colony, also because of its position and easy communications with internal zones. It was also for this reason that in medieval times it entered into many disputes, leading to the invasions of the Lombards, Byzantines and Normans, etc. Many times it was destroyed and had to be rebuilt. It also belonged to several different aristocratic families during the centuries, amongst which the Caracciolo, which took possession from 1589 to 1806 and held the title of the Principality. It then came under the Kingdom of Naples and went through a phase of notable development. Today, Avellino has a spacious modern atmosphere, and the town has spread as far as the plain itself. The old nucleus, the internal part where we find the Duomo, has remained, however intact, and is characterized by the uneven roads and non-symmetrical buildings. Benevento is situated at the centre of a large valley of the Apennines at the junction of the rivers Sabato and Calore. Born in the Oscan Samnite era, it was once called Maloenton, a name that probably originally meant return of the flocks. However, this was changed to Maleventum, which in Latin means ill wind, and later, when the Romans defeated the Piro army in the year 275 BC, they renamed it Beneventum, meaning a happy undertaking, and it became the first independent Lombard duchy. The remains of the walls, built during this period, are amongst the oldest in Europe. Today, this lively centre, both commercially and industrially, still manages to maintain intact its important monuments, which date back to Roman and medieval times. The Trajan arch here in Benevento is one of the best preserved in Italy. Erected across the Appian Way by Trajan in the year 114 BC, it is over 15 metres high and is the link between Rome and Brindisi. The Roman theatre from the imperial age has been well preserved. It was able to hold 20,000 spectators, is 90 metres wide, and was designed with 3 arches. One of the other highlights is the medieval church of Santa Sofia, built in the year 758. It is of an unusual structure. Its central nucleus consists of 6 columns connected by arches and a second outer ring of 8 pilasters. On the edge of a very wide, fertile plain of the river Volturno, which spreads out from the large, gently curving coastline, we come to Caserta. Founded by the Lombards in the 8th century, it was taken over by the Romans and then by the Bourbons. This modern and industrial town underwent a great change after the last war, socially and economically, but however it still manages to preserve some aspects of a medieval town. At Caserta Vecchia, on the small hillside above Caserta, we find the beautiful cathedral, built in the 12th century. It is a fine example of Norman architecture in the south, and also the additional works in Arab and Romanic style. However, what actually brought fame to Caserta in the mid-18th century was the royal palace, known as the Versailles of Naples. In fact, prior to this, the town was a mere village. It was Charles III of Bourbon who had the palace built, appointing Luigi Vanvitelli as chief architect. The palace covers an area of 51,000 square meters. The 2 main facades, which are approximately 250 meters long and 40 meters high, have several monumental entrances. The palace has 5 stories, contains 1,200 rooms, is served by 43 staircases and has around 2,000 windows. The whole construction is arranged around 4 monumental courtyards. The design of the building was controversial even in its own day, but the time and work involved in its production is incredible. Also the diversity of materials used, and of course the architectural layout in particular has made this opera a perfect monument. The Royal Palace of Caserta is one of the most sumptuous buildings of its kind in Italy. One can only marvel at the interior. The main portico is divided into 3 vestibules by 64 columns. It also contains the finest marble ornaments and several noteworthy paintings. The royal apartments are also very beautifully decorated with tapestries, paintings, frescoes and antique period furniture. Beyond the throne room there is the council room. There is also a small chapel. The gallery is formed of 10 rooms where family portraits are hung. And there is also an amazing library which contains something like 10,000 volumes, also paintings, marble works and porcelain. Across the courtyard there is also a theatre. Vanvitelli was also responsible for the layout of the park, consisting of lawns, lakes, a waterfall and fountains. There are also woods which extend to a great distance behind the palace buildings. After the grandeur of the temples of Paestum, we come to Agropoli, a very happy and joyful town, originally Greek, from where it acquired its name. Its wonderful spur-like rocks reach out to meet the sea. Its quaint port and beaches are crowded every summer by a great many tourists who return year after year for the warm hospitality they receive. From here, on through the lush vegetation, begins the coast of Cilento, which also boasts long stretches of beaches, backed by a wonderful display of mountainous scenery.